Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with return guest Marty McDonald. Almost 4 years later, you can find his previous appearance at marketeroftheday.com/179. And Marty McDonald is the co-founder and CEO of Bad Rhino Inc., which is a full-service social media agency. And he has grown Bad Rhino successfully because he has been able to develop truly unique and highly customized strategies that create incredible exposure for their clients' businesses. And if you are interested in amping up your digital marketing, if you have good things to say, people need to know about you and your business, but you might not have the time or all these skills to get this social media content publishing out there. If you don't have the time, if you want someone else to do it for you, Marty and his team have a lot to tell you. So Marty, it's been a while. Glad to catch up.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe it. Hasn't really been 4 years since 2016. Wow.
Just about, yes.
It doesn't feel like it was that long. I saw it when it popped up and I was just like, oh, all right, we'll talk to Robert again. And then I'm like, wow, that doesn't seem all that long ago. And then you just said 4 years when it came out of your mouth, kind of smacked me in the head. But I'm glad to be back and I appreciate your time.
And I appreciate your time too. And yeah, it's good to catch up. And it's like, I kind of go through the same thing. Sometimes I'll go when I look back at when was the last time I like emailed for this offer, or the last time I wrote some blog post or some course or product, and I'll be shocked at like, whoa, like it feels like only a year or two passed, but then so much time has passed instead. And some things, some of those marketing fundamentals remain the same. But what's good about all these years passing is that it seems like there are more and more tools, and it seems like there's less and less know-how that needs to be done. Like you can have hire a virtual assistant quickly. You can use some of these web-based tools like Canva to create the like social media graphics. There's all kinds of auto posting tools. I mean, the camera, the video on phones is amazing. The internet speed is fast. We can, knock out a video every hour if you want, no big deal. And so, I mean, what has your thoughts been in these last 4 years about just how, in your business, how the technology has changed? Do you think is it easier? Is it more confusing? Like, what's changed these last 4 years?
There's a couple of great points that you threw out there. In the past, 4 years, is like, man, that's like 3 lifetimes, maybe 2.5 lifetimes in the marketing world, especially online. I mean, things have changed so much. I mean, I'll just use two quick examples. Like the first one is just how you consume content. A lot of people subscribe to YouTube alone for their TV instead of cable, right? So that changes how people select. Before Netflix was still big and all those things, and they've gotten even better, and it's more app driven. So almost all of TV now is online and driven that way, which I think is crazy. I was listening to a podcast this morning and they were talking about that, and that really blew my mind, like thinking about where that's come from, but how it impacts the marketing side. And the second part that you brought up is it more confusing? Tools are out there, so things are easier. Canva and the camera phones and everything that you have at your fingertips, you can leverage to create a digital marketing plan. And I think the confusion part comes for most small business and even mid-sized businesses. Well, you know what? We can lump in everybody, any size business sometimes, is where do we start? How do we track it? How do we keep all these balls in the air and then still do our jobs? And as an agency, I don't think so much as I know, a lot of people come to us to really break that down. And what we've seen in that is, just like I rattled off all those changes in just TV alone, what we have seen are people coming to us from like an overall perspective. And we've morphed more so into a full service digital agency, not just social anymore, but we still lead with social. And I think that's important to know, because we do feel it drives, but social's become the internet's become social. There's a ton of things that have happened in the last 4 to 6 years. But when an industry, for what you said, in an industry where things change every 6 months, 3 months, sometimes 4 years is so long. So it's interesting to kind of think of it in that terms the last time we spoke.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I feel like the freight train keeps getting faster. And 4 years ago, the freight train was maybe at 100 miles an hour, and we thought, man, this is as fast as it can go, and now it's at maybe 300 miles an hour. And I feel like when we last spoke, even like putting out podcast episodes on a regular basis, I felt like
Yep.
even that alone was a lot. And then as far as the way social media was back then, I thought, okay, every podcast episode that I have or every blog post, like I'll tweet that once, I'll put that on the schedule once. And especially these last few months, like you mentioned about like balls in the air and a digital marketing plan. And when I hear phrases like that, what comes in my head is a huge laundry list of all these things that I'm not doing that I should be doing, like going back through all these podcast episodes and pulling out quick video clips, audio clips, getting quotes made, getting the like the quotations and the social media graphics made, getting emails drawn up so that way I can put it in my email sequence, contacting all these podcast guests such as yourself who maybe were on years ago and saying, hey, do you want to promote it? Here's a tweet I wrote for you. Here's a video clip you can post
Right.
on your own LinkedIn. Here's an email you can send to your list. And I get so overwhelmed with all of the good ideas that sometimes I feel like I'm not even sure where to begin. So do you feel or do you see something similar with your own clients? Because I mean, clearly, like your team can do it all. Like you said, you do social and then
Right.
some. So it's not a matter of do these clients have time for it, but even just like thinking of the possibilities, or even you telling them all the things or them checking in on you all the things, like is it overwhelming for you too, or is it just me?
No, it is. It's funny you start with the overwhelm part, because that was me today. Is I'm revamping a lot of things with my personal brand that ties into Bad Rhino, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, let's get this done and get these clips done from the podcast that I've done. Then let's get these done for my own podcast. Then let's get these things done where we had a professional video shoot back in February. Then I'm like this. Then I'm like this. Then I'm like this. And the same thing that you just illustrated, like it became overwhelming for me last weekend when I was like, okay, hold on a second. And I do that, and we do that for our clients. Is what we do is we start with the basics and go, okay, this is what you have. So we start with a strategy and audit, and that hasn't changed since day one. And start there and say, okay, let's peel back what you have, and how can we make it easily work for you? So we have clients that have come on recently too, where they have a ton of content. They just don't have the time to sort through it, analyze it from a certain perspective of how they want to use it, and then take it and put it into actionable pieces, whether it's going on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, etc. And then taking those and then forming ads. So there's a process that you have to put yourself through as a business owner to understand where your marketing is, where you had your most successes. And that's where we start with each client. Then you can start to sort out those pieces that you just rattled off and I just rattled off, to eliminate that overwhelm. And sometimes what it winds up is the majority, I wouldn't say them all. I would say it's probably closer to 75-25 now. It's not even 80-20 anymore. 75% of the clients that come to us at first, they're just completely like, we just need to start somewhere. Just get us started. And then those things have grown. Whereas, I would say going back, and 4 years is actually a good marker in the ground for that, where they would come to us and say, okay, we know we got to get started, but we want to do this. Where they came in at those times, they had an idea. I think since the train, like as you said, has been going so fast and it's getting faster, the people that haven't been doing anything online or haven't had very robust digital marketing plans, even though we're sitting here in the halfway point almost of 2020, they're just getting started. And they're like, we just need to get started. Where do we start? Because of all those things. And they feel that overwhelm. So we take that off their plate. And then again, using the same numbers, about 75% just don't have the time to do it. And it's time consuming to do it right. Then you have to have a little bit of patience because the internet's not magic. You have to put everything to work and then wait for the data to come back and then start to analyze. But overall, that overwhelm, I think, is a common thing for everybody in marketing because there's always the next new thing. Like, we're going to advertise here, and then we're going to do this, and then we're going to do that. But at the very beginning of this podcast, like you said, the fundamentals don't change. So the first thing you need to find out is what converts for your product, service, restaurant, whatever it might be, and then start from there and start to build out that strategy so you can eliminate that overwhelm for your agency or for yourself.
Well, fantastic. And this is reassuring because there might be people out there who, like myself, who I'm doing some. And
Right.
what's good is that I'm not at zero. I'm not feeling further and further behind like I should have started 6 months ago, a year ago, 4 years ago. At least I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing some. So that's reassuring for all of us that you're saying start somewhere, start posting something. And I'm also hearing from you that we all have some kind of content, right? We all have
Yes.
maybe a blog post or like a sales page, and things can be clipped off of that, or existing Facebook posts. Like we don't have to necessarily go out and spend 30 days putting out a new video every day. We can go back, and there's probably some really good stuff that we put out years ago, but we just haven't looked at it, and maybe the memory's faded. We might look back at it and go and find those old blog posts or something and say, whoa, like my memory of that was different. It's a lot better than I remember. I look back a couple of years ago and think maybe I'll cringe a little bit thinking about what I wrote, but I look at it with fresh eyes and say, actually, we can use this as is and just send people back to these web pages, this content that they have, like people who haven't seen it before.
You know what's great about that, Robert? And you're catching me at the right time because, I like how you do all these things off the cuff. I remember the first time we did it when I was looking through everything when I scheduled this interview. And I do remember in my notes, it was like, oh, it's just, kind of a free flowing thing, but you're catching things at the right time. I opened up a journal from 2008, which is all marketing notes, right? Really when I started documenting and going to a lot of events. I had been to events before and taking other courses as well, but I really started documenting things and I started going through and I'm like, okay, that idea won't work, but ooh, here's a really good one, right? That was just fresh to me, whereas I would think like something that was 12 years old, 13 years old even, where I'm like, would that work today? And it was the concept, it wasn't the content, right? And then I went back and I started looking through some of my electronic files, and I actually had created about a 2-page document that outlined my thoughts on that. And I'm like, this is pretty interesting because I'm looking back into my own brain, which would always be interesting. But the more important thing is exactly what you said. A lot of times if you've been in a business, it doesn't have to be 13 years ago, it can be 2 years ago, it could be 6 months ago, where maybe you sketched out an idea, and like Robert said, is you start with one spot. So that's all you have to do is start. It's like, oh, this blog post is a little dated, but man, that's really relevant today in May of 2020. So what I want to do is revise that. So now you don't have to start from scratch. You're just revising an older piece of content. Or maybe you do one better and say, instead of a written blog, I'm going to do a video on this, and I can just read off the screen basically and interject and update it. And those types of things I think are where people get frozen, right? Myself included. Is like, okay, we need to start whatever marketing plan for a client or for myself or for the company. And you sit there and you wonder about where you're going to get started. And then you start thinking, well, maybe I should start on YouTube, or maybe I should start with just digital ads. Maybe I should just start with, this or that, this. What about Facebook? What about this? What about that? I'm not good on video. I can't do. And that just kind of snowballs. And then you don't do anything. So I think when you're right is you kind of can go back and look even at last year's content, and you can start to create a schedule, even if it's just your holidays. For us in social media, a lot of times with starting with clients is just like, let's take a look at what you've done over the past 3 or 4 years or 2 years. And a lot of times they're like, well, I don't think it's very good. And I'm like, well, we want to look at some things. And that's where you start, is you pull some things out that worked really well for them, and you can show them like building blocks. And this is where you want to take off from here, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Well, this is fantastic. So you're saying that already that people should be, maybe as a little bit of a mini homework assignment, go back and look at what we put out 1, 2, 3 years ago, because it's probably somewhat usable, if not just usable as is. And as you're saying that, my mind is already thinking of so many ideas, and the thing that out of probably the 10 ideas that have been swirling around my head in the last couple of minutes as you're saying all that, what comes to mind is that people always, like this whole theme of what we're talking about here, is people seem to think they need to get 5,000 things in place before they even take one action. And what you're reminding
Right.
me of is like, there's like the issue of the social posting, but even something as simple as an email sequence, people think I need to have like a 30-day email sequence, a 45-day email sequence. And when I think about people getting stuck there, I'm thinking, you only if you just had like 6 web pages or 6 YouTube videos, 6 LinkedIn posts, 6 blog posts, you could just schedule those a month apart, and that would
Yep.
be 6 months worth of keeping your existing audience warm, your email list warm. And maybe next week or next month, once you felt like peppering some more things in the year, it could. But even if you just put out one thing per month, 6 months, even if you did nothing else, that, I mean, it wouldn't be a crazy fire hose of content, but it would be more than zero, and it would be more than I imagine a lot of other businesses do. And so this is all great stuff for us to be considering and doing. And I want to make sure that we cover the issue of this big, scary virus, the quarantine, the thing that has turned the world completely upside down. People are losing their jobs, or they're working from home, or trying to figure out how to do things remotely, or some businesses are having to scramble. And before we started talking, you mentioned that your own business has had to do a little bit of readjusting with this whole quarantine. So can you tell us what's been going on with you in that area?
Sure. So we're at the tail end of May right now, recording this, and when you stop and think, it's been close to 90 days when like this really started to break, where people started shutting some things down and all that. And the first couple of weeks, which was right after, I'm in Pennsylvania, right by Philadelphia, and so it was around St. Patrick's Day or just before, and like all of a sudden it was just like we're shutting down. And we service a lot of golf courses, golf clients that are in the industry, craft breweries, restaurants. That's one area. Those are some areas that we have quite a few clients in, and they were all impacted pretty hard. Like, hey, we're not open. We can't open. We don't even know what we're going to be able to do. So immediately, you had to pause ad campaigns. You had to change the messaging and content that was going to be posted. You had to do a lot of things. Our e-com clients, they paused ads right away because they had no idea exactly what things were going to go on. They were just panicking a little bit. Some of our other clients, not to just go down each area in industry individually, a lot of other ones paused very briefly to say, okay, hold on, let's just take a time out because we're not really sure what this all means. In about 2 weeks, 10 days, 14 days or so, that was about the way everything went for everybody. Then our bigger e-com clients, as well as some of our smaller e-com clients, started saying, hey, we want to ramp up ad spend. Everyone's sitting at home online and on their phones. And it was like Black Friday, where everybody's buying stuff for a good 3 weeks. We saw like good numbers. And during that time, as a business owner, you're sitting there and you have to make some decisions, and you have to change some things. You have to look at costs. You have to understand where everything's at, because you didn't know, like, it's like, this going to be for 6 months? Is this going to be for 2 weeks? What is this? And as we started to go through, our clients responded. Many of them were like, okay, we're ready to change everything up. And we had a lot of meetings. There was quite a bit of work to change everything. And then all of a sudden the phone started ringing like crazy. It blew my mind, because at first I was like, what are people going to do? Like, how are they going to put all this together? What is it? And we were starting to get calls. We actually closed before the end of March. I mean, we wound up closing 2 new clients, which I never expected. April, we started closing bigger clients, which were actually some in the mask industry, and some e-com, some direct to consumer food items that were pretty much all e-commerce that needed help. A lot of stuff came out. And then we also had a lot of B2B clients that had events canceled, that they started conversations with us. So it was like, all of a sudden we started getting busy. Now, busy, that's good busy, because you have new sales. The busy part around the coronavirus has been changing tone on a lot of things. I'm living in the northeast part of the country. We're a stone's throw literally from New York. I mean, it's 90 minutes up the road. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on there that's not going on in other parts of the country. I mean, that was impacted pretty hard. So like, you do have to be careful, and you have to understand what your audience is. But overall, like we took the time because we did have a little bit of a lull, after we got everything settled with our current clients, to start to revamp systems, to start to take a look at, what we want our agency to look like in the next 6 to 12 months, taking a look at a handful of things of our own content, which is where we started this conversation, and eliminating some of our own overwhelm. And now, looking down at June, it's a little bit slower, but overall the trend is growing. And I think by July, we'll start to really feel comfortable with our goals that we set at the beginning of this year without thinking about a pandemic, which we were on a great track record too. And we just took a mini detour, but overall, it's been very positive, and it looks really good in terms of digital marketing services for us and providing them for clients, both old and new.
Well, fantastic, and I mean, all of that made perfect sense in the sense that maybe we all had those 90 days, or we had somewhere in there our time to freak out and to have that depressed time. But now it's time to get things back up again, and you're seeing all over the place businesses adapt. Like maybe like they need to do some kind of like mail order issue, or get finally use this as an opportunity to get online, get hooked up with some kind of an app. I mean, you mentioned that you had that microbrewery client. I saw that there's been some of these breweries have transitioned into making hand sanitizer, so they use the same employees, same equipment, but then pivot a little bit, at least for the time being, towards some other sort of purpose. And you hear
Yep.
all over the place that all these people out there who have finally now finally there's the time to make the book, make the podcast, or start posting the YouTube video, or start posting on social media, start building the list, so that way you're keeping the business alive now, you're keeping the money coming in now, and especially when things get back to normal. And I mean, with all the uncertainty, you still hear that like this is going to end at some point. It's just a matter of when or what will happen before then, but there's guaranteed to be some kind of an ending, so at least we can be using this time as an opportunity to be building up these online assets, and maybe even getting those employees to work remotely, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I love your story there, that you've landed new clients because you've gone out there and found people who need your help. And so, along those lines, as far as the businesses that you can help, I know that we kind of sold people earlier on this idea of go back and find the content you have and start promoting it. And so, what kinds of services or what kinds of things can you do for businesses out there as far as the social marketing, the digital marketing, getting their message out there? What are the services?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to add one little quick thing to like the whole coronavirus thing, and where, some of that, at least from a digital side that we're seeing, if you're a company that relied heavily on live events for your sales, a lot of software companies are like that, and some other products. And I know you're ramping up for like the second half of the year. Don't be afraid to just pivot and don't just do virtual events, because there's a little bit of a fatigue with virtual events right now because everybody is doing everything virtual. So when you're thinking about your marketing, just get a little, different, get a little bit, take some time to think about what will resonate with your audience to actually close sales. I'm not saying don't do your virtual event, but you might need to buttress that with some other things. It's been very fascinating to hear how tired people are in corporate world, where kind of that B2B business lands. Obviously, they're exhausted by being on Zoom. So just something to think about. In terms of clients that we work with, we've worked with everybody from the restaurant up the street from our office all the way to giant pharmaceutical companies over the past 10 years and everything in between. We have a very diverse client, which has been good. And it was good when this whole thing hit because, like you said, we do have a lot of golf and craft breweries and restaurants, and they were all impacted heavily through all this. And they made a pivot, and they'll all come back. And we've been really good and flexible with them. But we also have worked with logistics companies and companies that are looking for those B2B leads and things like that. And the services that we provide are everything from website and web design all the way through social media and digital marketing and paid ads, as well as, SEO, video and photography if you need it, and graphic design. So really everything that you can think of to launch a digital campaign, including media buys. And we put it together in a custom package. We're not into making sure that we sell you on everything. We're going to put together a package that works best for your company, and most importantly, gets results for you, and not just you're spending money for the sake of spending money. You're going to put that into an investment and make it work, and we can help you do that.
Super cool. And where can people go to find out about that custom package, or maybe contact you and your team and hop on a call or something? Hopefully not on Zoom.
No, no, Zoom's okay. Just keep that in mind. I think it's important. So it's badrhinoinc.com. So badrhinoinc.com. And, there's a contact form right on there. We'll get in touch with you if you fill out that information. If you want to have like just a one-off question that you thought of something during this podcast, send an email to info@badrhinoinc.com. And I will respond to that. Just put in the subject line podcast. Just put Robert. I heard you on Robert Plank's podcast. That would be perfectly fine to send that over there. I'm not going to say you'll get an answer in an hour, but we'll get to it, as soon as we can.
All right, cool. So to recap those addresses, that is badrhinoinc.com. And then to send that email if you have a quick question, that's info@badrhinoinc.com. Put Robert Plank Podcast in the subject line, and then Marty will see that and respond to your question. And as we wrap up, wind down here, Marty, maybe we'll see you again in the next 4 years. Does anything come to mind as far as one lasting piece of advice to give us, or maybe like a sentence or two as far as like something that we should all keep in mind and be doing in our business?
Yeah, I think we'll just keep going with this little, what we're sitting into, hopefully as a tail end of a complete quarantine shutdown of a lot of things. I think what it illustrated as a business owner is that you don't want to wait until something like this happens to double check your insurances, to double check your bank accounts, your line of credits, all that sort of stuff that you have going on. Even if you think it's not a big thing, make a list of everything you had to do during the, coronavirus issue, and tuck it away. And maybe once a year, put it on your calendar to just run down that list, double check your employees, and how they're doing just health wise and mentally, just in normal times. Double check your, benefits packages for, the people that own your company as well as your employees. Double check your insurances and so on and so forth. I think that is something that everybody has learned, that in this way, and you learn it the tough way, unfortunately, is because it's stuff you don't think about. It's like, I'm done with that. I can move on to the next thing and the next thing. And I think that's something that from a business owner perspective, you should. And in terms of your marketing, things are going to change. And if you're looking for things to actually work that worked in the past, they may not work again. So make sure you do, at least at a minimum, talk to somebody that does have the expertise in the area of where you want to invest your advertising dollars in, and start to structure that, because this thing right now is going to make change across the board for a lot of industries, and it's going to change the marketing landscape. Not a ton, but there's going to be some impact in certain industries. So just double check that. And that's the best thing I could say at this stage of the game.
And I think that ties right into that theme that we were talking about of dig out the old notebook, the old notes that you wrote in 2008 at that event, or maybe now you're writing these notes in 2020, and like you said, all the things that you had to scramble and do during the emergency time, just revisit that once a year, and some ideas will still be relevant and some will be out of date. But when you mentioned that, what reminded me of is so many years ago, there was some business owner I knew who did not allow his employees in the office to use the word wait. And sometimes they had to use a different word besides wait, but it at least made them mindful of maybe they were using that word too often. And if you think about it, it makes you more proactive instead of reactive. All those things that you had to stop, and you had to stop doing the important things because this big unexpected event happened. If you just make sure, like you said, to make sure the employees are okay, or make sure that this recurring bill or this certification, whatever, anything like that is up to date, then we won't have to react and we won't have to wait, and we'll be able to go back and maybe revisit some old ideas that we used to do and forgot about, or maybe the timing was wrong, or maybe it was just like a flash in the pan, or maybe even the mechanism of doing that thing was bad, but then maybe there's some new platform to implement it on, right? Maybe you say, well, this Periscope thing wasn't working because that's gone, but now there's TikTok. So there might be like the idea itself is good from way back when, but then now there's a new way to implement it. So many cool and exciting things for us to consider and think about. But the most important thing is that everyone go right now to badrhinoinc.com. That's BADRHINOINC.com, and see what Marty and his team have for you. Click around, see if anything interests you. If it does, click on that contact link and ask Marty and his team what you think they can do for you, explain your needs, and maybe you can figure out a way forward. And thanks so much, Marty, for stopping by and for sharing some of this great wisdom with us. I appreciate it very much.
I appreciate it too, Robert. Great to speak with you again, and hope all is well in your life, which I know it's hectic as well for you.
But hectic can be good.
Exactly.